Polling out from over the weekend from NBC shows the 47th president with a 47% approval rating, which is the highest it's been during either his first or current term. Democrats, meanwhile, are hitting record lows as a party, and it comes at a time when younger voters who traditionally back Democrats and did so again in 2024, but no doubt the president saw some major gains. Let's talk about that and more. Emily Sturge from Campus Reforms up late with me tonight here on the Final Five for the first time. Welcome in. Good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me.
What were the issues, do you think, first of all, that were guiding younger voters back in November, and maybe what's sticking in their mind as we are in this second iteration of the Trump presidency?
Without a doubt, the #1 issue was the economy among college voters. And those new approval ratings that we're seeing from President Donald Trump, those record-breaking numbers, my generation is helping propel those numbers. A new poll shows that 53% of Generation Z approves of Donald Trump's job in office of his first 50 days. And that's because my generation is excited to see the dismantling of DEI that we have been forced upon within our education system. We're excited to see the border measures that the Trump administration is putting in place. Young women like myself feel safer jogging on our college campuses. We're also excited to see Donald Trump and his administration rebuilding the military. That's why we've seen a surge in young recruits. So on so many different fronts, Generation Z is very excited about this new administration.
You know, and when you mentioned about safety, I mean, the Laken Riley story, it struck a chord with a lot of people, even those that that maybe didn't necessarily support President Trump. There was certainly an emotional connection that they found with that story.
Yeah, you know, I like to think of the Trump administration as one of the most pro-woman administrations that we've seen in modern times. It's really significant that his first act of legislation was that Laken Riley Act, which was a bipartisan measure that would have saved the life of 22-year-old Laken Riley. And the left has created a generation of young women who are fearful of becoming the next Laken Riley. And it was nice to see the Trump administration take that seriously and seriously consider the safety of women, young women like myself, by passing that legislation and upholding the promises that they've made to the American people about ridding our communities of criminals.
You mentioned about new polling. There was some other polling that came out, and these were some numbers that we saw along the way. Let's take a look at this. Voter turnout among young people aged 18 to 29. It was lower than the historic 2020 election, for which our initial turnout estimate was 52% to 55%, and on par with 2016. At 2020, a lot of people had said that one of the reasons we didn't see the turnout in 2020, obviously, was because of COVID. It was a much different time. And one of the reasons maybe a lot of younger voters turned out in 2024 was because, and let's be honest, and I think anybody, if you're watching this and you skew Democrat, you skew liberal, let's be honest, it was a much different 4 years. And you can say everything you will about whether or not the threat of COVID that it posed, but that a lot of people felt like they missed out on something in their school, whether it was high school, whether it was college.
We did. I mean, the COVID pandemic was a massive driver, I think, of shifting young conservatives further to the right. Many of us had our graduations canceled. We had our proms canceled. We feel like we missed out on years of our lives. And then also the impact of the Biden-Harris administration, the economic impact that my generation faced. Over 30% of my generation says that they're still living at home with their parents because they just can't afford to move out under the economic situation that the Biden-Harris administration left us with. We feel like the left took things from us, took away our high school years, took away us starting our lives out on the right foot. And that's why I think so many members of my generation have shifted to the right to vote for policies that they feel like would better support their lifestyle.
Now, to be fair, when you talk about the cost of housing, which I think, you know, it's been a persistent problem for a long time. We saw it certainly go up as inflation picked up over the last couple of years. I mean, what can be done? Because I've had Democrats, I've had Republicans, young Democrats, young Republicans saying nobody's really serious about getting to the table and saying, how do we build more housing? How do we make that more affordable? It's one thing to say, let's bring that dream closer, in closer reach, but how do you make that happen?
Well, that's a promise that Trump made to the American people, and I'm excited to see if he does uphold that promise. One thing that young people are really looking forward to is Trump's promises when it comes to no tax on tips, no tax on overtimes, that economic agenda, renewing the 2017 tax cuts. And my generation is very hopeful that his economic agenda helps us reclaim that American dream. We have a lot of optimism among young people right now for regaining that American dream. And yes, that is something that I think we should hold the Trump administration accountable for, making that big promise. I'm excited to see what they're able to do about it.
It's one thing for the president to make the promises as a candidate, but it also requires people in Congress to do something about that. Do you have faith in Republicans in Congress that they carry out that part of the agenda, or do you keep certain things and run the risk of losing other promises?
I'm excited to see how this plays out. I hope that there is not infighting within this party that stops those tax cuts from going going through, because I think those tax cuts are going to be very beneficial to the American people, to the middle class, and I want to see it go through.
Emily Sturge from Campus Reform. Emily, great meeting you. Thanks for coming in tonight.
Thank you so much
appreciate
for having me.
And the Final Five is back after this.